All right, we are joined now by Dean Cain. Dean, how's your day going today, sir?
I can't complain at all, Chris. It's raining here in California, which is rare, but we need it. We're a desert out here in Southern California.
For sure, for sure. Dean, let's jump right into it. Obviously,
Let's
Lois
go.
and Clark was a huge part of what you did. Not all, but a big part of it. So before we even get to Lois and Clark, walk us through your origin story. How did you even get into acting in the first place?
My origin story. I love it. Oddly, it's a great story, I think. I was born in Mount Clemens, Michigan. My mother had just left my father, my biological father. He was stationed at an army base down in Georgia, and she went up to, he was being unfaithful. So she left him pregnant with me, had my older brother, 2 years older than me, and went up to Detroit, Michigan, where my grandfather was one of the commanders of the base. If he wasn't the commander, I don't know. I wasn't born yet. I was born in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and on Selfridge Air Force Base in Macomb County there. And then when I was 3 years old, after living in the Cape Art housing, there, the military housing, my mom decided to move to Los Angeles to become an actress. Whew, yeah. Short story is she ended up meeting my father, getting married, and my dad was a young out of work actor, and so on and so forth, raising myself and my son, my brother. And then there was a horrible incident that took place in Hollywood in the apartment complex that we lived in, or the one next door to us, where a woman was, I guess, was raped and shot. And I don't know if she was, I don't know the story 100%, but I was playing outside with my brother and our two friends, and I was the youngest of the bunch, so I wasn't able to have a gun. We were playing cops and robbers, I guess. And I started searching for something to use as a weapon. So I found something inside our little, I guess there was a little pond of some sort inside our apartment complex in the middle area. And it happened to be a real gun, and it was the gun apparently that was used in that situation. And my dad called me. He's like, Dean, come here. Let me see what you got in your hand there. I brought it over to him, and apparently it was a weapon. And so based on that and some other things that had been happening in that area, my parents said, you know what, let's get him out of this area. My dad's from South Dakota. He likes some space. So we moved to Malibu, California. And I was raised in a trailer park in Malibu, California, which is now those trailers sell for like $2 million. It's crazy.
Of course.
But back then it was, $12,000 or something like that. And I grew up running around on the beach and going to school in Malibu with a bunch of kids whose parents were involved in the film industry. Kids like Chris Penn, Sean Penn, Rob Lowe, Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez, Holly Robinson. So these are all the kids that I grew up with. And so it wasn't a huge stretch for me to have watched them all go into the film world, to sort of follow in their footsteps. But my dad became a film director. In fact, he directed Young Guns, which starred a lot of those kids, while I was in college. I chose to leave Malibu and go to Princeton University. I think it's the best university in the world, or certainly it was then. I got my doubts with some of the things that go on these days with some of the stuff going on in college, but it's still an unbelievable, prestigious university. So I chose to go there. Was wonderful. Wanted to play football and do everything, and I got a chance to play in the NFL. But as I graduated, I said, okay, I'm going to play in the NFL for as long as I can. Turned out it was for 45 minutes, but I had expected it to be several years. And I was decided by watching what my friends did, in the summertime in their internships on Wall Street and such, that was not for me. I loved the life of making a project, making a film, making a television show, putting it out there and sharing it with the world. That to me was more dynamic and sort of the way I was raised. And I felt like that was a real natural progression for me. So instead of joining the corporate world, I decided to join the art world. And here I am, 35 years later. Oh my gosh.
Hey, I think it worked out pretty well for you.
I'm not complaining at all. But, I did go to college with guys like Jeff Bezos, and, he was a couple of years ahead of me. But so going back, I would have liked to have buddied up to him a little bit just to say, hey, if you ever have any investment opportunities in the future, I'd like to
throw it my way.
Little seed money. Sure.
So before Lois and Clark, you had a little stint on 90210. Kind of walk us through that. How did that kind of come to be? What was that experience like for you?
So look, when you decide to be an actor out here in Hollywood and you're a young person just out of college, you start going on all these auditions, you go to acting classes, so I was doing all that, and you start to meet, you see the same actors, going on these auditions, doing these things. At least that was like back in my day. Commercial auditions. I did 40 commercials in 2 years, Diet Coke, Frosted Flakes, whatever it was. I was, everything. I was doing all kinds of different products. Brute by Fabergé. It was the Brute. Actually, my Brute commercial was kind of fun. They were all really fun. I was getting used to being an actor in this world and you're seeing these different people. Then, I started getting shots on television shows. I got to guest star on a wonderful show, Life Goes On in Hawaii. That was amazing. It was my first guest star roles. Then I did something on the Cosby spinoff, A Different World, which was phenomenal. And then I'd gone in for a lot of the Spelling shows, and Mr. Spelling had sort of a group that he would bring in over and over and over. Excuse me. Kind of we joked about it being in the stable of actors, and he'd start picking from them, and people that he liked would bring back over and over. And I was able to do that a bunch of times. And finally I got a shot to play Rick in the Paris episode where Brenda goes off to Paris. And I was all excited because my dumb face thought I was going to go to Paris.
Little did you know.
Universal Studios, baby, in their Parisian streets. Excuse me. I just did a lot of traveling and flying, and my body has not yet recovered. I was cast on the show. The show was the biggest show in the world at the time, and it was just massive. And so, I'd been around this business for a long time, but I hadn't gone over on the biggest show and these kids. And so I got over to that show, and it was, it was a lot. It was pressure filled. I was excited, but it went great. It was fantastic, and I learned some really, really valuable lessons on that show. And one of them was from the late Luke. Luke, bless his heart, that he passed away. But I came in there, and I'd been doing the show for, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes or whatever it was, and I'd never had a chance to meet anybody other than Shannon Doherty. Excuse me. And then so I came on, and Luke saw me when I came in there, and I was like, I know who everybody is. And he goes, "Hey, listen, thank you for what you're doing on the show. Really appreciate it. It's making things, so good on the show, and you're doing a great job. I really appreciate you being here." And I was like, man, that's awesome. Because I felt so much more at home all of a sudden. And, you have this trepidation when you come on a set. So what that taught me right there was to do that. When I finally got my own show, which was Lois and Clark, every time we had another actor come on, whether it was the late, great Raquel Welch, who I loved so much, or Tony Curtis, or Bronson Pinchot, or just some other actor doing something, I thanked them every single time, because that to me was the way you should do that for other actors and other people. And for me, that was a lesson in humility and in how to treat others 100%.
And it's such a small but grand gesture, because you have these people, whether it's you going on to another person's show or someone coming on to Lois and Clark, where they're stepping into a world that was revolving before them, and it's going to continue revolving after them. So they're just jumping in for the week or whatever it is, depending on how long they're there for, and it can be a whirlwind. So to have someone who's been there and is a part of it be like, thanks for taking time to be with us. That's the coolest thing.
It makes it so much more comfortable. And, these people that came on Lois and Clark, and when Tony Curtis comes on, what are you going to say to him? When Raquel Welch comes on, I remember I got to tell my dad, I remember going to her trailer when she's there. I was like, oh my gosh, Miss Welch, I thank you so much for being here. It was so great. It's so great to meet you. And then in one of the episodes, I got to kiss her. I remember calling my dad and going, "Dad, guess what I did today?" He's like, "What?" "I got to kiss Raquel Welch." There was silence for a full 5 seconds. And then I could hear him just laughing. I could hear him laughing. I mean, when he was growing up, I think they were, somewhere in the same age, or a couple years apart. That woman, just such a bombshell. It was either her and Margaret that I think he really loved Anne Margaret too. Still loves Anne Margaret, but it was the idea, the ridiculousness that his son got to kiss Raquel Welch was just this most ridiculous thing ever. But it's just so, when Luke Perry would be like, "Look, come over here and do this," when he says, and Jason Priestley did the same thing. Here's other, the alphas on the show, whatever, and they're so welcoming. I was like, that's the way you need to treat people. And so I took that lesson to heart, and I do it to this very day. I thank everybody. If you have someone come on a show and they're not solid, and they're on for their short couple days, it just brings down the whole show. So let's make everybody comfortable, and let's work as a team to put this product out there. And that goes along with my football background of being a teammate. I want the best thing out there that can be out there.
So Lois and Clark runs 93 to 97. How does it come about? How do you get the lead or the tip to go in and be like, I'm going to audition, casually to be Superman?
So as you're doing the audition circuit, casting directors get to know you. You go up for 60 projects. They get to see you and how you act and what you're doing in different roles and different things. So they get a sense of who you are. That's why casting directors are important, because they kind of know the talent that's out there and who fits where. Well, I got a call one night, and it was like the day before, and they're like, hey, they're doing this new Superman show for television. They're going to do a series, and they want to see you on Friday or whatever the day was. And I was like, Superman on television? Ooh, Christopher Reeve, pretty amazing in the special effects. And I was like, this could be a disaster. This could suck. And they're like, no, I think it's 6 on the air already and whatever. And I could tell it was getting close to getting to be my time to have a show, because I kept getting really close on other projects. And I was like, okay. But I read, and I thought to myself, this Superman thing can't work, whatever. And then I read the script, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is a different take. This is Clark Kent is the character, and Superman is the disguise. And I can relate to that. I can relate to it as a football player, as an athlete, maybe, put on my athlete persona. When I play football, maybe I was thinking I was Superman, it's different. And then the regular day walk around as Clark Kent in that sense. To me, Superman was the disguise, the action character, and Clark Kent was the regular person. So it made sense to me. And I went and auditioned. I went in the audition room, man. First of all, there were like 12 other guys there I recognized from all kinds of projects. And I was like, uh-oh, the big boys are here. Okay. And I was the first person that the producers brought in. And it was Deborah Joy Levine, and it was Robert Butler, who was known as the pilot maker. And it was a casting associate on a camera in a little room in Warner Brothers in the casting area. And I remember coming in there. I was very comfortable because I liked the material. I felt comfortable with the material. And I said, I read it last night. I remember saying, I read it last night, and I think I have an interesting take on it.
Fair enough.
Robert Butler just goes, okay, let's see it. So I did my version of it. And he goes, okay, great. Thank you. Thanked them all. And I left. I didn't hear anything for 2 weeks. Usually you hear like a day or two, hey, listen, they really like you, or whatever. I didn't hear anything for 2 weeks. I figured, all right, well, that one's gone. What's going to be next? What's another audition that I'll go on? And then my buddy heard from somebody who was a casting associate over there, hey, look, they'd like you on that Superman thing. And I was like, what? That was weeks ago. What? And then it started happening. They started doing callbacks, and they had gone through and had to cast all the roles before they contacted anybody. It was such a big show. I think they spent $7 million in 1993. And so that's a lot of money. Even if you spend it now on a pilot, it's still a lot of money. Back then it was, before inflation, it was even higher. And so they brought us in and started reading us in groups, like duos, a Lois Lane and a Clark Kent, and this. And I saw the Jimmy Olsens, I saw the Superman. You started seeing, who they were whittling it down with, and I never got paired up with Terry Hatcher until the very end. When I finally went to network, there was myself and Kevin Sorbo as Superman, and I was like, Kevin's blonde. This is over. I got this. And I knew they were concerned with my age and how young my face was, and that, and I remember people calling me Superboy when I finally got the job. Oh, you're playing Superboy? I was like, hey, I'm a man, okay? Superman. So it came down to Kevin and I finally at the end at network, and I read with a couple different Lois Lanes, but I didn't read with Terry Hatcher, although she was one of the 3 Loises that were there. But it's funny, you can see there's the Superman, there's the Loises, there's the Jimmy Olsens, and the whole 9 yards. So I went in there, was fortunate enough to get the job. They cast me on a Thursday, and then my buddy who had been my Lois Lane, like running lines with me, my roommate, we were going to go on a ski trip that weekend. It just so happened I got the job, and we still went on our ski trip, but I had to come back early to read with 10 different Lois Lanes on that following Monday or something. And we had to read a scene, and I was terrified because I was like, oh my God, I got to be in front of the network 10 times with 10 different Lois Lanes. They're going to realize that I can't act and I'm in trouble and they don't like me. I'm going to get fired. But the job was, the scene was that Lois was inebriated, had just broken up with her French photographer boyfriend, and was ready to bed down Clark Kent, who wants to really badly, but decides not to. And I remember when we got that scene in the audition process, that was the time where I was like, okay, I got it. I really think I got this character. And so Lois bursts through the door, kisses me on the lips, and then proceeds to try to seduce me. And that's the scene. I had to do it 10 times in a row with 10 different women.
You poor guy.
Yes. Yeah. The hardest thing in the world. It's so difficult. But the last one was Terry Hatcher. And none of the other actresses had asked me to run lines with them or anything like that. But they said, "Hey, listen, Terry would like you to run lines before she comes in." I said, "Sure, great." So I went in there, and this is so typical of the relationship between myself and her as characters. I walked in the little room and I said, "Hi." And she goes, "You don't like me, do you?" And I was immediately like thrown and like, what? And that's the thing is, she's like, "Well, you never talked to me at the network thing." And I go, "I was just trying to get a job. I wasn't talking to anybody. We never got to work together. So why would I have spoken to you? It wasn't like I didn't like you." So then we went and ran the scenes, and then we went and performed it. And she was the best Lois, and she was the best kisser too, just for an aside.
Just I ended up put it out there.
A lot.
A lot.
And that was a lovely thing. Because if she wasn't a great kisser, it'd be awful to have to do that for 4 years. Just saying.
So season 1 gets filming, and like you said, Superman, the TV show, that's a big ask, because you're less than 10 years removed from the last Superman movie with Reeves in it. So the world is kind of fresh on what Superman is. And now you're putting it on TV, and that's a whole different ballgame. As you're filming season 1, what's the vibe? Do people think it's going to be a hit?
Well, when we started the pilot, we knew it was going to be 6 episodes on the air. So we kind of knew that was going to happen. Doing the pilot, though, is just like an absolute whirlwind for me, having to fly up to like up near San Francisco and get my body cast done. And, they put this stuff, they had the body cast your whole body, your head, your face, sticks straws up your nose to breathe. I'm a little claustrophobic. Didn't like that very much. There's so many things. And then you're meeting with all these people, and you're trying to put together the costume. You're trying to learn how to fly, all this stuff. And they're trying to work on their special effects. And it's like, oh my God, is this going to happen? Then we start shooting. Robert Butler, bless his heart. That guy is Deborah Joy Levine wrote a great script and a great concept, but Robert Butler really put us through the paces, and he made me very comfortable with my character. And so I felt really comfortable doing it. I was terrified that people wouldn't buy me as Superman, though. It's a scary thing. It's like, Superman's Christopher Reeve. There weren't superhero shows on the air. So here we are coming to try to do this. And I just thought, man, this could be huge, or you could get skewered. And I knew the risk was great, but the reward was fantastic too. And it just turned out that and Bob Butler was really great about making sure we had the chemistry on screen and doing things. And the relationship was so clear. And I credit him so much with my performance, because he really honed it in before I ever started the show. He had me dialed in and ready to go. And thank God for him, because, I was so green and so new. I still look at it now and go, wow, you were such a kid, but there was something about that really works in the show. And he had the foresight to put it together. So bless Robert Butler.
So the show starts to air. Do you have a moment where you're like, oh crap, this is a thing? Like they don't hate me, they like me.
Well, no, really. It was a very slow thing like that. It really didn't feel like it never felt like it was a smash hit to us. It always felt like we were on the bubble. We got to keep working hard, and it's got to be Lois and Clark centric, because we never got any time away from the show. And it just felt like it was always kind of a grind, and we're always fighting for our lives. A couple other shows came in next to us while we were shooting season 2. 2 other shows started up on either side of us on the stages at Warner Brothers. One was a little show called Friends, and then the other one was another little show called ER. So these shows came up next to us and became just juggernauts. And we were always sort of struggling along, doing our thing. We just kind of we were kind of, under today's numbers, we'd be just massive success. Back then there were 3 networks, and so we were getting big numbers and comparatively, but we were never a runaway hit. I think season 2 or 3, we ended up getting real big numbers, and I realized, hey, this is a great thing. People called me Superman all the time. I got that. I was never off set though. It wasn't like I was out there running around. So we were just on set 24/7 is what it really, and I'd go home and go to sleep for 6 hours and be right back. So we never felt like, oh my gosh, we're the thing, or, but I started getting called Superman all the time. That takes a little getting used to. It's not horrible. But then the show started, it seemed like the show was getting along and people were really watching it. I didn't realize how many lives it affected and how many people really loved the show until about 10 years ago or 8 years ago when I started doing Comic-Cons. And then hearing people's stories about growing up with the show and how it affected them and having experienced that myself with my son, the shows that we would watch together, Friday Night Lights or whatever it was, and then how important those shows were for him and I and our bond. And people, when they tell me that now, listen, that helped get me through high school when people were picking on me. I would look to your Superman character, or my grandma and I, my grandma's passed, but we would watch that show every weekend and the way it affects people's lives, it's really humbling and extremely fulfilling to hear that. And it makes me very happy because there's you are giving up your life for 4 years when you do a show like that. I mean, it's gone. You are on set all day, every day. And I can't explain to people how difficult that grind is. Unless you've done it, you don't get it.
So shifting, seasons 2 and 3, there's some changes. There's some writing changes. There's some casting changes. Jimmy Olsen is recasted for season 2. I have to ask you, is it because he looked like you? That's the internet rumor.
I've heard that too. And there were contractual things he was trying to change his contract. There's probably a lot of reasons. And he did, Michael Landis, great guy, great Jimmy Olsen, had a great relationship with Perry White too. And there were some, a whole bunch of, the internet was in its infancy, so there couldn't be big internet rumors at the time, but there was saying that he did look like me. That's not unheard of. That's not something I haven't heard before, but I think it really kind of came down to some contractual issues. And then they used that as, look, you look too similar. We're going to get somebody different anyway. It could very well have been that. I don't know.
I have to say though, I liked Michael Landis, but I really think Justin Whalen brought life to the Jimmy character, and he really kind of expanded on his chemistry with Perry, Lane Smith, who, by the way, was phenomenal as Lane Perry.
Amazing.
Right? So I'm oh my God, I can't even say enough about him. So we also lost Cat Grant.
Oh yeah.
We lost Cat going into season 2, and then there was kind of the shift to action. It seemed like the show wanted more of kind of like the comic book feel. Did you kind of sense that, as you're on the show and you're seeing the change, or was it business as usual for you guys?
Oh, no, we were very well aware of the change because Deborah Joy Levine, the exec producer and creator, sort of moved to a more of an oversight role. And Bob Singer and his crew came in. They're the same people who produced Supernatural afterward. And I mean, and they were already, superstar producers. They came in and they said, listen, we want to make the direction go in this way and do these things. And so it was very clear that was going to be the direction moving forward. It was great. Those guys were fantastic too. Loved working with them and his whole group. They know exactly what they're doing and they're great. And so that was their decision to make that change. I was along with it 100%. Listen, I was happy to have a job and real happy to be on. And so I had a lot of fun because I liked the action. I liked doing that sort of stuff. It was great fun. And then the relationship, the relationship was just wonderful. And they were great with that too. So it did change. And I think it changed, there were a lot of it that changed for the better. Excuse me. And the numbers showed that.
Oh, they did, for sure. We had the chance to talk to Kay Callan a couple of weeks ago, and she speaks very highly of you, Dean. And one of the things that she talked about was how there was basically a directive from the network that do what you want with Lois and Clark, but they're not getting married. So do you think that hindered the ability of the show to tell the story, knowing that there's a stoppage? You can only go so far with them. And then, of course, we got the clone wedding and all those shenanigans as a result. But do you think that the hard directive of we don't care what you do, but they can't get married kind of slowed things down a little bit? Or is it just what it was?
I think, and there's been a lot of people, Monday morning quarterbacking this, saying that had we never got them married, the show would still be on the air. That was the downfall. I heard a lot of that sort of stuff. And they try to backtrack and and do the clone wedding and that sort of situation. I don't know. I mean, I get the fact that Lois and Clark are apart, and that always creates the tension. It's moonlighting. It's whatever it is. And we had some of the same producers from Moonlighting as well. I understand that. I would have liked to have seen it progress personally. I would like to see them get married, have kids, have those kids become part of the show moving on in seasons 5, 6, 7. You know what I mean? I would like to just break new ground and create a new situation. That's what I would have liked to have done. That's what I always was pushing, pitching, but nobody, it wasn't my show to do that. It was just my show to be in there and play the actor. I wrote a couple of the episodes, but they furthered the relationship, but they never had any closure to. One was a Christmas episode and the other was a virtual reality episode where anything you did, you could break some of the norms, but it didn't really count. And so, it might've been a smart thing to keep them apart, but I would have liked to have seen them get married and have kids. I'd like to go even further. So, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I would have been right. We'll never know at this point in time.
I mean,
but I think
it didn't help that they started bouncing you around your time slot in season 4. I think you guys had 3 or 4.
Well, once you get to that place, you're starting to have trouble. When you start,
right.
we were going season 5. We had a season 5 pickup, and we were going to make season 5. I wish we had, but Terry got pregnant. I don't know how that happened. It wasn't me. I know how it happened. So her husband and her they got pregnant, and it was going to be a complicated pregnancy. I was off making a movie in Toronto when the head of the network, Tony Jonas, called me up and said, "Look, it's not going to happen. Terry's pregnant, and it's going to be a difficult pregnancy. She's going to be bedridden." I said, "Well, why don't we do it where Lois is sick and not, or maybe, and then we'll make her pregnant by the end of it, and then have a kid." And so she's not in all the episodes. And they're like, we at this point in time, we're just gonna move on with that. And I said, "All right, well, I guess that's it. I'm done with the cape and the boots for now."
So you find out that the show's ending. Was there ever any circle back? Did they ever somewhere else down the line talk about bringing Lois and Clark back? Or were you ever offered to play Superman again for another project?
I was never offered to play Superman again for another project. There has been talk about bringing Lois and Clark back. I support that 100%. I'd like to see what Lois and Clark are doing 30 years later. I'd love to see what's going on. I would love to sort of, even if I can't, I like the character so much, and Terry's such a good actress. I would love to see them now. Even if we can't call them Lois and Clark. If I have to do something, create something that's close to Lois and Clark, we don't call them those characters. I'd love to just see where these guys are now in their lives. And so we'll see what happens. But as far as Warner Brothers is concerned, I don't think they're very interested in that. But I don't know. I haven't sat and talked to them about it.
So you're Superman for 4 years. Superman comes to an end. Business as usual as far as just hitting the pavement, going back to work?
Well, no, not at all. Because now I would just get offers to do this movie, that movie. And I was trying to find my way, figured out which movies were the right ones for me. Doing a movie called Best Men with Sean Patrick Flannery and Drew Barrymore and a great group of people. That was wonderful. Tamara Davis directed a great fun film. Trying to figure out where I would fit in the film world. Knew that I was going to make movies, and then in a couple of years later, my son was born, and that changed my whole world. When my son was born, there was no way I was going to take the lead in a series. There was one chance I was going to do one. I was about to make a deal to be one of the highest paid actors in television. I would have had to move to Vancouver to do it. The deal was on the table, but my son's mother wouldn't agree to move up to Vancouver, and I would have had to fight a move away case. So basically, I knew I'd be on set 15 hours a day and not be able to come home and see my kid. So it was really a choice between being a father to my son and taking this wonderful deal and do this series for years and ended up going for years. I chose in a heartbeat being a father. So it's been the greatest joy, blessing, and the hardest work I've ever done. But I wouldn't change a thing, not a thing, because my relationship with my son is worth more to me than anything in this world. In fact, he just texted me, and I'm going to see it, make sure he's okay. That's what I'm going to look and see.
Dean, I got to ask, what was the show?
Oh, I would never be able to tell you that. I would never throw anybody under the bus. I appreciate you asking. And if I were you, I'd be asking the same question, but there's no way because.
I'm also going to speculate that Smallville was filmed in Vancouver. I don't know if you knew that or not.
That I'll tell you is not the show. But okay, I did go on Smallville, fair enough, which was great. Smallville was great to go on. By the time, were they in high school at the end? I mean, I did season 7 or something like that.
So when Smallville wrapped up, they were adults. They were working at the Daily Planet. They were in their careers at that point.
Okay, wow. I didn't watch it all, so I'll be honest. But I watched my episodes. It was great fun. Those are great folks, and they did a great job on the show. And for them to run 10 years or whatever they ran, or 7 years, whatever. How long was it? 10?
They did 10. Yeah.
That's insane.
That is. Yeah, no, for sure. For 10 years, especially coming, well, any TV show in any time period, 10 years is insane, because to keep people invested that long, and especially with today, because everything is so connected to ratings and money, and you start to decline a little bit. They're like, is this the end? Should we wrap it up on a high note?
Immediately.
To get 10 years out of a season or a show is incredible. Now, you also did Supergirl. So going back, looking at Smallville, and then it was like 8 years later you did Supergirl. Is it just cool for you to kind of jump back into the Superman world?
Yes. I love being part of that whole world. And I think it's really smart of them, Greg Berlanti, who is now the purveyor of all things DC, I guess, on television, with all the numbers of shows he's done. I did the first film he directed, called The Broken Hearts Club. And I love Greg, and he's fantastic, writes such great dialogue. And now he's just, I think he creates a show every day he gets up. The guy's just killing it. But when it was Supergirl and they asked me to play Supergirl's dad, I love that. I love that nod, and anybody who is part of that world gets it. And I think it's, I love that Terry came back on there. I'm glad that Linda Carter went on there. It's like when Christopher Reeve did Smallville. That's awesome to be part of that world. And I respect that world, and I honor my place in it. And so I just feel honored to be part of it. And I'll always want to do that to some degree, because it's a huge part of my life.
All right, Dan, we got some fan questions for you. The first one coming in, they purposely made it a vague question. They just want to know, what has playing Superman meant to you in general?
Well, I mean, playing Superman is the greatest American icon, comic book icon ever created. I still love the fact that, when I met Superman in my lifetime, it was truth, justice, and the American way. And I still believe in that fully. Not to be a xenophobe or anything of that nature, but the idea was, here is the most powerful being in the world who is raised in the United States of America with American values, small town American values, which are, kindness. And he decides to be, instead of this negative, awful thing, he decides to embrace it all and be the most kind, giving, humble human being out there. And with those powers, to be able to do that is a great lesson in itself. So love being part of that world, and I love that message 100%. The later incarnations here, where it's getting dark, and the Henry Cavill version, which is great. He's fantastic. Zack Snyder makes great movies and has incredible images and things. It's just a darker world for me, and I prefer Superman to be in that lighter world. And so, I like that version of Superman. So for me, it's incredible gift, an incredible honor. I'm humbled by it. It's great fun to be called Superman. I mean, I'm a police officer now too. I'm a sworn sheriff's deputy, and there's a lot of jokes that fly around. Superman's coming to do this or whatever. Anytime I play a sport, anytime I do anything, it still sticks with me. And I say, if you're ever going to be, stuck with one character your whole life, Superman's a pretty good one to be called.
It's a pretty decent one.
Yes.
What was it like putting the suit on for the first time?
Terrible, awful, intimidating, because it was just Lycra. All I had was Lycra, spandex. It was a blue with little footies, little strap that went around the bottom of your foot, and you had to put on tights, and there was nothing on it. It was just a blue suit with a little area for you to, to be able to go to the bathroom through. Then we had to add the underwear on the outside, which was the big joke. And then, then we had to put the boots on, and we put a cape on, and the cape was its own rigmarole for 2 or 3 years. So we finally figured it out. And then everything came together once the S got on there, though. That was when you go, okay. So until then, woo. Yeah. And by the end, I was so comfortable in the suit. It's ridiculous. Like I could have gone to the bank, it's just because I had it on all the time. And I wouldn't even think twice about it. In between shots, because it gets really warm in the summertime in Burbank, I'd peel off the suit and put on like a Dodgers baseball shirt that I could get on and off real easily. And so we had a whole process for that, but it was terrifying at first and then got strangely comfortable.
Do you have one of the suits?
Ha!
I feel like when you play a superhero, you should get a suit.
I agree with you. So we were supposed to come back for season 5. So I didn't steal stuff from the set. I would have, but we were supposed to come back, so I didn't even worry about it. Then I didn't have anything. And then a couple of years ago, an incredibly generous, lovely group, lovely family from Switzerland gifted me my suit from season 4. There were like 3 or 4 of them, and amazingly they did that. And so I happen to have a suit here. I'm not wearing it currently. Actually, it's not true. I have it on. I just have it pulled down.
It's under.
But I have the suit, so it's kind of incredible. It's kind of incredible. So I do have a suit, and perhaps I'll throw it on someday and take a photo and share it with the world.
And you just occasionally just walk by that every morning and just like, yep, that was me right there.
I have it in a safe spot. Let's put it that way. It's not like it's on a mannequin in the corner of the room or anything like that. I don't have it in a glass in case I flip on, wake up in the morning, a light comes on, and then it wakes me up as my alarm
rises from the ground.
It just drops down. It drops down from the ceiling, and then I get up and I feel very inspired.
All right, last fan question, Dean. Do you have a favorite episode from the 4-season run of Superman?
I really enjoyed the Christmas episode that I wrote. It was a lot of fun. But my favorite kind of moment was, I think it was the end of season 2. It's when Clark asks Lois to marry him, and she says, "Who's asking, Clark or Superman?" There was something about that was so magical and so lovely. So that's one of my favorite moment. I'm partial to the Christmas episode because I love Christmas and I love the sentimentality that comes with Christmas and families being together and all the messiness of it. So I like that there was a certain heart in that. But that moment of when he asks her to marry him and she finally just goes, "Who's asking, Clark or Superman?" I think that's my favorite moment of the whole thing.
Which, as a fan, you look at it and you're like, "God damn it, Lois, it's about time."
Well, yeah, it's like she should have figured out. That's why we had the fun things with Tempest. He's like, glasses on. I was like, duh. So yeah, that makes it fun.
Because I think Terry is probably, in my opinion, Terry's the best incarnation of Lois that we've seen.
I think she is by far. Lore. I think she's number 1. Yeah.
And she just didn't fit into that naivety of not knowing Clark. Like she's the personality that should have known. She should have been the one to figure it out of all of them, I felt. So when she finally did it, I was like, Jesus, it's about time.
That was the biggest question for her all the time. I'm sure she gets that still. But she is such a strong actress and did such a great job being Lois, being a strong, independent woman, yet also being vulnerable and being feminine and having all those other traits. She is by far, in my opinion, the number 1 Lois Lane of all time. Yeah. Have
you guys done cons together?
We've done a couple of cons together. We were in Australia, where we did a number of cons together. That was great fun. We were in Liverpool, England, where we did one together, which was great fun. And we did one in New York City. And we're going to be in Steel City in about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Steel City, nice. Comic-Con in Pittsburgh. So I think we're going to be there together at the same time. She's, I'd love to be able to connect with her. When we connect, we speak all the time, but we speak whenever, we reach out with each other. But I'd love to get together and sort of figure out what Lois and Clark are doing 35 years later, 30 years later. I'd love to get that to happen. We may have very differing ideas about what that is. So we'll see where they are, and hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle.
And Dean, last question for you. What are you doing now? What are you up to? Current projects? Where can we see your work? What's going on with Dean Cain in 2023?
Man, I'm busy. I've got season 9 right now of Masters of Illusion on the CW that I host, which is a great magic show, magic and illusions and so on and so forth. And we're going to be shooting, I think, more of that going forward. I make documentaries, which I really enjoy. It's I made 2 documentaries, which are fantastic. One about the Armenian genocide and another about the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States and throughout the world. So those are big, important things to me. I just wrote, produced, directed, starred in my first feature it's my baby, called Little Angels, that we're just about to get the distribution for. It'll come out here in 2023. I'm really excited about that. I have a movie that's premiering tomorrow night at the Sedona Film Festival called Condition of Return with Natasha Henstridge and Annalyn McCord. It's a great film. It's a thinker. I make a lot of faith-based content because I like this one group that's making a lot of these little faith-based movies, small little movies that end up on Pure Flix and things like that, which is great. But it's an attempt to, provide some alternative programming, some nice stories that otherwise wouldn't get told. And they're small budget films, but it keeps me busy and I love supporting this mission. So I've got a few of those coming out. Looks like there's going to be a God's Not Dead Part 5. I was in God's Not Dead, the original, but they just contacted me recently and said, let's do it God's Not Dead 5 and revive your character who was a jerk. So that'll be a lot of fun, but it's just constant. I mean, I have so many projects that I've already worked on some that I can't talk about that are coming out soon. It's a busy time, and I write a ton. So I couldn't be more busy or more happy. And I'm working with another group called Genesis Gold Group, which is wonderful because, when you get to my age, you're worried about your investments and your money. And I own a number of houses and I've done very well in the world of money. But with the way the economy has been and ideas of like this global digital currency and everybody talks crypto and this, I found that precious metals have become a tremendous asset. So I work with Genesis Gold Group as well, which is genesisgoldgroup.com. They're fantastic. You can roll over 401ks and IRAs and things like that. So it's, I get to do a little bit of everything. And I'm also, like I said, a sworn sheriff's deputy in Frederick County, Virginia. I wear a badge and a gun, and a reserve police officer in Pocatello, Idaho, because I just think our first responders and our law enforcement officers and our military are just real heroes, and I love to support them any way I can. So I support them by wearing the same uniform. And that's the whole story.
You have nothing going on. You have nothing going on at all.
Nothing.
You just sit around the house all day. Got it.
I wish, because I love doing that too. So in order to be able to do all these things, I have to spend some days sitting around the house for sure.
All right, Dean, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us. I really, really do appreciate it. It means a lot. The listeners are going to love it. Thank you.